Alrighty, time for the weekly outlook. We're at an interesting part in the chart. Um, we're just now breaking our end of last week, breaking away from most recent value. Have we broken out completely yet? Not quite. Is there stuff above us? Yes, quite a lot above us. It's got potential to be, put resistance. But as usual, we'll take it level to level and sort of point out some of these big important levels. Right? But just looking at the daily, right? Your mini balance here that we're kind of now trading back into, right? And these highs here, lows here, high there, high there, high there, and now just getting over, right? End of last week. So the question is, do we accept back into this balance above us, right? And work towards this, let's say, anchored VWAP or 2024 VWAP, or 2025 VWAP, which is a tad higher. Some of these moving averages potentially. Or, maybe this trades sideways here in the upper end of last week's range, right? Or this upper part of this balance here. And, maybe we consolidate a little before going higher. Or we could see this push higher fail, trade back into this, which would not be the greatest look for buyers, right? If we kind of push a little higher, or regardless of where we open Monday or where we open in a couple hours, if this fails back into the range, it becomes a little bit of an issue. Although there are great levels below us, and we still have this gap here. When we accept back into balance, I really don't like that. Right? And when we do that, I kind of look for an entire traversal of this balance. Okay. There's part of me as a permeable that still thinks, like, regardless of whether we do trade a little lower back into the balance, like, there's still some potential for support. But nonetheless, if I'm, let's say, long intraday off of like a level down here, I'm not necessarily looking for this move. Okay, I'm essentially looking for maybe a little scalp off of this, or maybe back up to some like the next level above us. Okay. When we get more of that MGI here, then I can maybe look to get long somewhere and then look for that leg higher. But until we get that, yeah, sort of stay cautious if we're within last week's range. Okay, and potentially lower. So that's gonna be the basic idea for both ES and NQ. There's like one level specifically that I'm watching within this range down here. It's like sort of like the first little line in the sand on both ES and NQ. With we'll go over ES first, with the first one being 54.75, just a tad below Friday's lows. A little weak on the lows here. I know NQ had some poor lows. That'll sort of be like the line in the sand. I kind of want to be holding above this taper here for the most part, right? So we'll be watching Friday's lows. If we do have to go visit that, I'd prefer that we can kind of look below and then kind of reclaim back into Friday's range to get long in that scenario. And then some other couple levels below us that I may look for long opportunities at, but I'm not looking for this to go up there. I'm looking for this to maybe back up to the first level of the next level above us. Right. And once we get more MGI, wherever it is, whether it's here or here, right, whether we get a profile that starts to look like this or whatever it may be, right, then I can go and say, okay, let's use some of these levels that we get from this session to go look for long opportunities or short opportunities, whatever it may be. All right, so we have that there on ES. Most bullish scenario is holding this 55.15 to 55.30. It sort of puts you at the lower end of, or the lows of this last balance up above us, and sort of the highs of most recent pivot highs, right? And sort of this double distribution on ES that we got Friday. So we can also mark off Friday's highs, I guess. All right, so currently holding that overnight. Hasn't really gone anywhere new though. So first big level of resistance, would think, is sort of where this anchored view up off the high is. 5630. And I believe this is simply just the point of control or a shelf here. This last balance up here wasn't necessarily great. And then like it wasn't like one big chunk of volume. It was kind of split up into like three different little high volume nodes. Not my favorite to work off of. But nonetheless, I'm still seeing this sort of as like as this balance here, right? So get some of those levels above us, the gap above us still, right down here. First big shelf, both on this composite and the 2025 composite, or high volume node there. First upside target I'm gonna be looking for. Like acceptance into this, like I'm essentially looking for a traversal of this, right? We just saw it on the daily. We could divvy this up into like three different little pockets. I don't really want to have to do that. I've sort of pointed out like the more important ones that I think. But I will be if we work through this and this specifically. I'm gonna be looking for traversal up to this upper end, right? And downside, if we do see a little bit of downside, right? Once again, that pivot's gonna be 54.75, at least for me, early on in the week. Yeah, let's start losing that. Yeah, there's a couple levels, and you got some poor lows that we need to go sweep, and like 54.75, I'm sort of gonna be light on the long side. I'm gonna be cautious until I get more MGI. I'm gonna expect us to kind of maybe close this gap, or maybe even get a full traversal of this balance right below us. Right. If I'm solely looking at last week's profile, right, which I'll sometimes do. Yeah, we had a double distribution last week, arguably a triple. Right, mostly double, 1, 2. Right, mostly due to the gap. And if I'm looking at solely this profile, there's an argument to be made that you can be looking for trade opportunity up against these, right? Whether it's a look below and failure, or maybe it's a bid off of after you close the gap. I just really hate the idea of this balance below us and trading back into it, right? Once we're up here, I hate the idea of trading back into this, right? Sort of near this 54.75. So that's the overarching theme here. Is this balance below, balance above. So I'm going to rely less on last week's profile specifically, and just work with sort of the two big balances that we're working up against. Hope that makes sense. NQ, similar idea. Their profile, their composites look a little different. Right, you're kind of working into, at least now, sort of this high volume node here, this balance. Right, on both composites, 2025 and the larger one. So they've sort of done a decent job trading back into this. Obviously, like the big important ones up here at this like 690 to like 730s. I believe you also have your anchored VWAP off the most recent pivot high also, right there, right below it per se. I think last week you also had a double distribution. It looks like, arguably triple. Shifting value higher looks okay. Their line in the sand that I have for them is Friday's lows, poor lows, so maybe I'd like to see them get swept first. Right, but same idea. I do not necessarily want to be long, regardless of whether I have levels here, which I do. But I don't necessarily want to be long once we trade back into this. Okay, below this, arguably that. So we'll use Friday as that reference point to sort of navigate us through, or to determine whether we want to accept back into the balance below us. Because NQ's already trying to sort of make their way up into the prior balance above. Right. We can use at least trading Monday, keeping it relatively simple at the levels, just sort of focusing on this uppermost ledge there, the upper end of the upper distribution there. I know when we get a double distribution on something, like I usually just end up focusing on like the little gap in between the two. Could have had a level there. I'm not too like interested in like playing anything like within the range Friday. I'd rather just see the highs or lows get taken and then go from there and sort of see which side's gonna have strength. Okay. Right, because like I said, I really don't want to I really don't want buyers to fail and trade back into the balance below us. I'd rather work with levels above us and wait till we can get over those before taking it to the next level. In this case, up here, if we can like get above this, like I would feel a little more comfortable. 19700s to try to take it up to the upper end of the balance here. And whatnot, I gotta move some levels around. But once again, we've got moving averages that are curling down. We haven't quite tested like the longer time frame ones. These just the 50, 100, and 200. I know we've gotten over like the 20, but not quite there on a couple other ones. VIX back below 30, good sign if you're a bull. We also have, going to take a look at all of these. All right, the 20-day one, of course, came down to a pretty important pivot on the lower end. Doesn't mean we go straight up. Always an opportunity for pullback sometimes if we need to. This is the 200-day. The 100-day, I believe. Yeah, also nice bounce off of the lows. What I really wanted to point out, though, is the 50 and 20 and 5. Not the 50, 20 and the 5. Right, sort of approaching this upper end. Doesn't mean like we have to go reject instantly and see some downside in indices. We can get leadership in Mag 7. We saw a little bit of it end of last week. I truly think we could get a rally in the Mag 7 and leave sort of some other names behind if it really wants to. Once again, we can spend some time at some of these highs and sort of have a prolonged period of a slow grind up, as people intraday like to call it. Right, and then the 5, of course, should be a lot higher. Much more shorter time frame one, sort of already at that high already and kind of coming back down. So, specifically this one, could we get that 80 to 90 reading, trade sideways a little bit, or get some rotation out of some of the other names and get some rotation back into Mag 7 potentially, maybe. That's sort of why I made the tweet last week of saying that we could see the most hated rally happen again within Mag 7, right? It's sort of my take, but are there any other many equity plays I want to really take a look at this week? Not too many. I'm still gonna be bullish IGV and software, like we were bullish crowd. Good. I still think there's an opportunity for some other names within IGV to get going. But you're still at this point, at least on your individual names, you're within this balance down here, within this range down here, right? And it's tough for me to like get long into those, which is the tough part where we're at. Like, it's a lot easier for me to get long something that's this doesn't really look like all the other charts, but get long something that's over these last couple of highs, right? Spotify did a decent job. I believe Abga was getting over. Looks good within chips. I know chips haven't been leading as of late, but getting over. But a lot of names still look like this, where we're still below these last couple of pivot highs. Google looking a little different because of earnings. Yeah, Amazon's still down there. Microsoft's still below. Tesla got over because of earnings, or not necessarily. They need to like confirm this. Well, the level was 260 on Tesla, and they got over Friday and sort of made that move up. All right, but still kind of below these last couple pivot highs and pivot lows back here on a lot of names, which makes it tough for at least for me. I'm the type of one to be buying into lows, right, and shorting into highs. Um, so tough spot for me on a lot of names. I think we've done okay though. There's one play I'm interested in. I do like Bristol Myers. If we can get like a trade here down into like, I might start some here ahead of earnings, depending. We still got like a month, no, 2 months, 3 months, 2 months. So maybe a play for next month or end of this month. Who knows? But I would like to get a cost basis in Bristol Myers down in the 44s, 45s if possible. Align we're already in. Crowd we're already in. Oracle we're already in. I do like IGV still and software. So I'll probably look for more opportunities on that. Snow, there's an opportunity early on in the week, I think. Still up against those last. Oh, we got over those last couple of highs. Trading at the point of control of all this stuff down here. Already saw that rotation down into the lower end. Now I'm potentially looking for the rotation back up into the upper end, maybe even higher. So with that in mind, I'm going to be working off of this 157s, 158s. All right, we'll see what we do an hour or two after the open, see where this is at, and go from there. I'm pretty bullish on this one, so that wraps it up. Yeah, so hopefully y'all have a great week.